Breaking up is never easy, but some relationships don't end when they should. Sometimes, love turns into obsession, and obsession turns into something much darker. This is the story of Lisa and her terrifying experience with her crazy ex-boyfriend, Derek. It's a true horror story, one that will make you question just how well you really know the people you let into your life. The breakup. Lisa had been dating Derek for 2 years, but things started going wrong in the last few months of their relationship. Derek became possessive, controlling, and unpredictable. He would check Lisa's phone, show up at her workplace unannounced, and get furious if she talked to any other guy. Lisa knew she had to end it. She tried to do it gently, explaining that she needed space, but Derek didn't take it well. He begged, cried, and promised to change, but Lisa stood firm. She blocked his number, unfollowed him on social media, and even changed her daily routine to avoid him. For a few weeks, everything seemed fine. Derek had disappeared from her life, and Lisa started to feel like she could breathe again. But that peace didn't last long. The stalker in the shadows. Strange things started happening. Lisa would wake up to find missed calls from unknown numbers in the middle of the night. Her social media accounts received messages from fake profiles, all asking about her or sending cryptic, threatening messages. Then one night, Lisa came home from work and found a single rose placed on her doorstep. There was no note, no message, just the flower. Her stomach twisted in fear. She was sure it was Derek. Her friends told her she was overreacting, that maybe it was just a secret admirer. But deep down, Lisa knew better. The break-in. One evening, Lisa was home alone watching TV when she heard a faint scratching noise at her window. Her heart pounded. Slowly, she turned off the TV and listened. The scratching stopped. Trying to shake off the fear, she went to bed. But just as she was drifting off to sleep, she heard the sound of a door creaking open. Her bedroom door. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She knew she had locked all the doors before going to bed. Someone was inside her house. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it toward the door. For a split second, she thought she was imagining things, until she saw a figure standing in the doorway. It was Derek, face to face with a monster. Lisa screamed, but Derek lunged at her, covering her mouth. "Shh, Lisa, it's just me," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. Lisa struggled, kicking and thrashing. Derek pinned her down, his grip tightening. "I told you, we belong together. Why are you making this so hard?" His voice was eerily calm, but his eyes were filled with madness. Lisa managed to bite his hand and break free, tumbling out of bed and grabbing her phone. She ran out of the room and locked herself in the bathroom, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. Derek pounded on the door, screaming, "You think you can get rid of me? You think I'll let you go?" The operator on the other end of the call told Lisa to stay on the line, that police were on the way. But Derek wasn't waiting. He started slamming his body against the door. Lisa knew it wouldn't hold much longer. The end, or not. Just as the bathroom door was about to break open, Lisa heard the sound of sirens outside. Derek froze. A moment later, the front door burst open, and officers stormed in. Derek tried to run, but he didn't get far. The police tackled him to the ground, arresting him on the spot. Lisa broke down, sobbing as the nightmare finally came to an end. Or so she thought. Derek was sentenced to prison for breaking and entering, stalking, and attempted assault. But even behind bars, he still found ways to torment Lisa. She would get anonymous letters, messages from people she didn't know, always with the same message: "I'll be back for you." Lisa moved to a new city, changed her name, and tried to disappear. But even now, years later, she still feels like she's being watched. Every time she walks home at night, every time she gets an unexpected call from an unknown number, she wonders, is Derek still out there, waiting, watching? Some breakups don't end with a simple goodbye. Some people don't let go. And sometimes, love doesn't just turn toxic, it turns deadly. If you ever get that feeling that someone is watching you, that someone from your past just won't let go, trust your instincts. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't ghosts or demons. They're the ones who once said they loved you.
A new beginning. Or, so she thought. Lisa thought she had finally escaped. After Derek's arrest, she packed her bags, changed her name to Emily, and moved to a small town 3 states away. She cut ties with anyone who knew her old life and started fresh. For a while, everything was peaceful. She found a job at a bookstore, made new friends, and even started dating again. The nightmares of Derek slowly faded. She told herself he was locked away, that he couldn't hurt her anymore. Then, one day, she received a letter. There was no return address, no name, just a single sheet of paper with 6 chilling words. "You can't run forever, my love." Her hands trembled as she read it over and over. It had to be a mistake. Maybe it was a cruel joke. But deep down, she knew. He had found her. The watcher in the dark, Lisa tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just paranoia. Maybe someone else had sent it. But then, small things started happening. She would come home from work and find her door unlocked, even though she was sure she had locked it. Objects in her apartment would be slightly moved, her books rearranged, her toothbrush missing, and then reappearing days later. Then came the phone calls. At first it was just silence, then breathing. Heavy, slow breathing. One night she answered, ready to scream at whoever was on the other end. But this time the voice spoke. "Lisa, or should I say, Emily, I told you, you can't run from me." It was Derek. Lisa dropped the phone, her entire body frozen in terror. He was supposed to be in prison. How was he calling her? How had he found her? She ran to the police the next morning, begging them to help. But when they checked the prison records, they told her something that sent ice through her veins. Derek had been released 3 months ago. Trapped in fear, Lisa moved out of her apartment the same night, checking into a cheap motel outside of town. She kept the lights off, afraid to even peek outside. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow looked like Derek. Then, in the middle of the night, she heard a knock at her door. It was soft at first, then louder, then pounding. Lisa grabbed her phone and dialed 911, whispering to the operator. Then, a voice came from the other side of the door. "Lisa, open the door. I just want to talk." Her blood ran cold. She pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering as the door handle rattled. The operator stayed on the line, telling her police were on their way. But Derek wasn't waiting. The door shook as he slammed his body against it, over and over. Lisa clutched a lamp, ready to fight. Then, silence. She held her breath. Was he still there? Minutes passed. Then she heard sirens outside. The police stormed in, searching everywhere. But Derek was gone. All he left behind was a note, taped to the peephole. "I'll see you soon. Nowhere is safe." Lisa knew she had to disappear again. The police took her case seriously this time, assigning an officer to watch her. She moved to another state, this time under a different name, cutting off all contact with her old life. For months, there was nothing. No letters, no calls. She started to believe it was over, until one night she was scrolling through social media and she saw a new account following her. The profile picture was all black. The username was random numbers, but the bio sent her into a panic. "You can't hide, my love." She clicked the profile. It had one post, a photo, a picture of her, taken from outside her window. Lisa turned slowly, heart pounding. Outside in the darkness stood a figure, watching. waiting. Derek was back, and this time, he wasn't going to stop. The chase begins again. Lisa's heart raced as she stared out of her window, her breath caught in her throat. The figure outside was still there, motionless. Her mind screamed for her to run, to call the police again, but she knew it wouldn't make a difference. Derek had been one step ahead every time. For the next few days, Lisa barely slept. She kept the curtains drawn tight, locked every door and window, and installed extra locks. Every sound outside felt like Derek coming to claim her. Even the smallest things, a knock on the door, the hum of a car engine, set her heart pounding. One night, as she was walking home from work, Lisa felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched. She glanced over her shoulder, but no one was there. She quickened her pace, then took a turn down an alley. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Quick, urgent, like someone was gaining on her. She turned around to see nothing but empty street. Then, she heard it. "Lisa." The voice was unmistakable. Derek. Her legs went numb, her body frozen in place. She had no choice but to run as fast as she could. She could hear him chasing after her, laughing maniacally, the sound of his footsteps growing louder and louder.
She dashed down the alley, turned left onto another street, and finally saw a brightly lit cafe in the distance. With no time to lose, she sprinted toward it, praying someone would notice her. But just as she reached the cafe, the lights flickered. Then they went out. She looked around in panic. She was alone. And then the shadow appeared. Derek stepped into the dim light, his smile twisted, his eyes full of rage. "I told you, Lisa, I'd find you. You can't escape me." The revelation, Lisa had nowhere to run. She tried to back up, but the alley was blocked. Derek moved closer, his footsteps slow and deliberate, like a predator savoring the chase. "Why are you doing this?" Lisa gasped, her voice barely audible. Derek's smile grew wider, almost sadistic. "You think you can leave me behind like that? After everything we had? Number, you belong to me." He took a step forward, eyes gleaming with madness. Lisa backed up until she hit the brick wall of the cafe. She couldn't outrun him anymore, couldn't escape the nightmare he had turned her life into. The man she once loved, now reduced to something dark, twisted, and unrecognizable. As Derek took another step, Lisa's thoughts raced. What could she do? The police wouldn't make it in time, and Derek was too close to even scream for help. Then, out of nowhere, a figure appeared behind Derek. It was the barista from the cafe, a young man who had been closing up. He rushed toward Derek, shouting, "Hey, leave her alone." Derek spun around, furious, but the barista didn't hesitate. He pushed Derek hard against the cafe wall, knocking him off balance. Lisa, stunned and confused, watched as the barista held Derek in place. "Get out of here. I've called the police." For a brief moment, Lisa thought this might be her chance to escape. But then Derek broke free from the barista's grip with an almost unnatural strength. "You should have never interfered," Derek snarled, his voice cold. The barista stood his ground, fists clenched, ready to protect Lisa. "Get out of here, Derek, or I'll make you leave." But Derek wasn't listening anymore. He lunged forward, pushing the barista aside with one swift movement. Before Lisa could react, the man was on the ground. Derek was gone, disappeared into the night. The truth unfolds. When the police finally arrived, Lisa was in shock. She sat on the sidewalk, her body shaking, watching as officers investigated the scene. The barista was shaken, but unharmed. "I didn't know who that guy was, but I had to do something. He looked like he was going to hurt her." Lisa tried to explain, but her mind was still clouded with fear. She couldn't comprehend how Derek had found her again. How could he have known? How did he always get so close? The officer who had taken her original case approached her. "We've got some news about Derek," he said, his voice serious. "He didn't act alone. We've been investigating a network of stalkers, and it turns out Derek's been in contact with others like him." Lisa's heart sank. The man who had terrorized her was part of a larger group, a network of people who used technology, surveillance, and manipulation to stalk and control their victims. The officer continued, "We've been tracking his movements for a while, but we didn't have enough evidence until now. We'll be able to put him away for good, Lisa. You'll be safe." But even as the officer spoke those words, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that Derek wasn't finished. She had survived this encounter, but his obsession had only grown stronger. He wouldn't stop, not until he had her. Lisa knew that no matter how many times she moved, how many times she changed her identity, Derek would always find her. But she wasn't going to run anymore. She was going to fight. With the help of the police, Lisa set a trap. They planted fake social media accounts, set up surveillance, and made it look like she had let her guard down. Months passed. Derek took the bait. He started making contact again, leaving clues, sending messages. But this time, Lisa was ready. The night she finally confronted him, she felt the weight of everything, every moment of fear, every sleepless night, all the pain he had caused. When Derek showed up at her new apartment, thinking he had cornered her, he found the police waiting. This time, Lisa didn't hesitate. She watched as Derek was arrested, his smug smile replaced by rage and confusion. He screamed as the officers cuffed him, but Lisa didn't flinch. She stood tall, knowing that this was the end. Derek would never hurt her again. Freedom at last, after everything Derek had done, after all the pain and terror he had put her through. Lisa felt a strange sense of peace. He was behind bars, and this time, she could finally breathe again. But deep down, she knew something. Even though she was free, even though Derek was locked away, there would always be a part of her haunted by the memory of her crazy ex. A part of her that would always wonder, was he really gone? Or had this nightmare only just begun? Shattered peace. Months passed since Derek's arrest, but Lisa's life remained anything but peaceful. She had moved back to her hometown under a new identity, determined to rebuild her life. She had therapy sessions, spent time with friends who didn't know the true extent of her ordeal, and tried to regain the sense of safety she had lost so long ago. But there were whispers. At first, it was just little things. She'd wake up in the middle of the night, her heart racing, convinced she heard someone whispering her name. She'd check the locks on her windows, only to find them securely fastened. But the uneasy feeling remained. Then the letters came. At first there was one. A folded piece of paper slipped under her door. "Did you really think I was gone? I've only just begun, my love. You'll never be free. I'm always watching." Her blood ran cold. She slammed the door shut and immediately called the police, but they found no evidence, no fingerprints, no signs of a break-in. It was as if the letter had appeared out of thin air. Lisa tried to tell herself it was a sick prank. Derek was locked away. There was no way he could still be watching her. But deep down, she knew this wasn't over. The Masked Man. A week later, she received another letter. This time the message was more cryptic. "You can't hide from me. You're mine, always. When you least expect it, I'll be there." The next night, she had a visitor. Lisa had just finished dinner and was sitting on her couch when she heard a knock at the door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, she peered through the peephole. A man stood outside, his back turned to her, his head slightly tilted down. He was dressed in a black coat, and his features were hidden by a plain white mask. Lisa's heart thudded in her chest. This wasn't Derek, but it was someone who knew her, someone who was watching her just as Derek had. The man didn't knock again. He simply turned and walked away, leaving Lisa trembling in the darkness. She called the police immediately, but when they arrived, the man was long gone. There were no witnesses, no camera footage. The police couldn't do anything. But Lisa knew she was being hunted again. This wasn't just a coincidence, it was a message. The hidden truth. The strange events continued. The masked man showed up outside her house several times over the next few weeks, always at night, always just out of sight. His presence grew more frequent, and Lisa began to feel like she was losing her mind. One day, Lisa decided to take matters into her own hands. She knew something was wrong. She needed answers. She went through her old phone records, looking for any clue that could explain the reappearance of her stalker. And that's when she found it. A number she had seen before. It was the same number that had sent her the anonymous letters, the same number that had been on the voicemail of the phone she had left behind when she moved away from Derek. Lisa's hands shook as she dialed the number. It rang twice before someone picked up. "Emily?" came the voice, and it wasn't Derek's. "I know you thought it was over, but it's not." Lisa's stomach dropped. "Who is this? What do you want from me? You know who I am, but you don't know what we've been doing. We've been watching you for a long time." The voice clicked off, leaving Lisa in stunned silence. A dangerous game. It wasn't until weeks later that Lisa discovered the horrifying truth. Derek wasn't the only one. The network of stalkers that he had been part of was much larger than anyone had suspected. They had been following her for years, each one obsessed with her in their own way. Derek's obsession was just the beginning. Lisa's new stalker, who had called himself the Watcher, was a member of the same group, one who had been silently waiting in the shadows, biding his time. And now that Derek was behind bars, the others were closing in. Lisa went to the police with her discovery, but they told her they were limited in what they could do. Without evidence, without concrete proof, they couldn't stop this faceless group. It was her word against theirs. Her world was unraveling. There was no escaping. A desperate measure. At her wit's end, Lisa decided to take the one step she had been avoiding, confronting the group head-on. She had to find out who they were and how they could be stopped. She was done being the victim. Using the information she had gathered, she tracked down one of the other people involved in Derek's stalking network. She reached out anonymously, offering to meet. She needed answers. The meeting was set in a secluded park at night, and Lisa arrived prepared for whatever might happen. Her mind was sharp, her body tense with fear. As she sat on a bench waiting, she could hear faint footsteps approaching. She didn't look up. She was ready for this confrontation. A figure stepped in front of her, a woman dressed in black, with an emotionless mask hiding her face. "You think you can stop this? You'll never be free," she said. Her voice was cold and unfeeling, like a machine. Lisa's pulse raced as the woman moved closer, but Lisa didn't flinch. She had nothing left to lose. "Tell me who's behind all of this. Tell me why." The woman tilted her head. "Because, Emily, you were always the prize. You were always the one we wanted. Derek was just the beginning." The woman reached into her coat and pulled out a small device, pointing it toward Lisa. In that instant, Lisa realized what was happening. She had walked into a trap. But just as the woman pressed the button on the device, the sound of sirens filled the air. The police had been monitoring the area, tipped off by Lisa's anonymous contact. Officers swarmed the park, quickly surrounding the woman. Lisa gasped for air as she watched the woman being taken away in cuffs. But there were more, so many more. And as the woman was led away, she turned to Lisa, her masked face revealing nothing but an eerie smile. This isn't over. It's just the beginning. The final warning. The woman was taken into custody, and the investigation into Derek's network of stalkers expanded. Lisa's life, once again, seemed to be turning a corner. But even as the police closed in on the other members of the group, one question remained. Would Lisa ever truly be free?